Gus Van Sant's Chimes at Midnight is and isn't Shakespeare at the same time. It is clearly a Shakespeare adaptation in some ways. It is clearly an adaptation of the same source text that Orson Welles uses for Chimes at Midnight, the Henry IV plays, and some of Henry V, the story of Prince Henry and Falstaff. It is equally not, and at times it is paraphrasing lines from Shakespeare directly. It is a clear, straight lift. There are whole scenes from Shakespeare's plays in this movie. One of the phrases Van Zant doesn't change and paraphrase is chimes at midnight. We keep that in there. Is this visually like Orson Welles' project? Obviously not in any kinds of way. Van Zant's a very different director. And just as clearly, there's a whole large section of this where it's not about Shakespeare at all. Van Zant is using Shakespeare or borrowing and adapting part of Shakespeare and then doing other things at the same time very very different artistic purposes. Van Zant is an indie filmmaker from the 90s, a writer director. He is interested in marginal folks. He's interested in the beauty of the American landscape, and this movie is super American. Is this is this the Falstaff story and the Henry IV, the Henry the Future Henry V story? Yes and no. Van Zant is under no Van Zant feels no obligation to be faithful to Shakespeare, and let's be honest, if you're unfaithful to Shakespeare, someone else will come by to do the other thing you left out pretty soon. You can get those other things. Chimes at Midnight is available if you don't like this. There are all kinds of reasons you might not like this because taste is taste. But one thing Van Zandt is doing is actually disposing of some of the things that have kind of accumulated around the Falstaff story and getting us back to, at least on one level, something very much part of the original that we may have lost touch with. This Falstaff story is not cozy. If you have the idea that Falstaff and the boys are just merry jokesters in the tavern and it's all fun and games and no one's getting hurt, you're missing the point of Shakespeare. And there are productions that do that. Van Zandt brings us back to something that was in the original text for the original audience. That these folks are economically marginal, very unruly, very much outside the straight world in every sense of that. That they are a little dangerous and even more in danger. That they are super marginal. One bad winter could finish them off. They're in physical danger and real suffering and want pretty much all the time. We are back to that level of unruliness. Not a kind of like seminar room idea of the carnivalesque, but like, okay, these are genuinely these are homeless people. These are our hero is a drug addicted, narcoleptic, homeless street hustler, an itinerant sex worker who, on top of all those things, has a whole bunch of like unhappy emotional problems. Yeah, he's miserable. The really daring move Van Zandt makes is to pick a protagonist who's not one of the usual two. Is this Falstaff's story the way Wells would have it be? Is this the future Henry V story, the Prince Hal story, the way Shakespeare himself and lots of adaptations of Shakespeare make it? No. This film tells you what it's like to be in Falstaff's entourage. The misery of that. What is it like that your role model is Falstaff, another more articulate, older and more articulate street hustler who also doesn't really have a secure roof over his head? What does it mean to trust and love the Prince Hal figure? Mikey in this movie, in this film, is someone like he's like Bardolph or Nim. He's one of Falstaff's hangers on. He's a new character, a unique character, but he's in the structural place of those characters. And what's it like to have a relationship, to form a relationship with a slumming rich boy who's going to leave you for the straight world eventually, in every sense of that, being conventional, heterosexual, bourgeois? Mikey is none of those things. What's it like to love the prince and have him just walk out of your life because he was only going through some kind of adolescent phase where he always meant to? And Shakespeare is very clear that the prince always means to dump all these guys, to betray them, to abandon them. This is a movie totally about abandonment. If it gets us to the Falstaff Lake, it is, and is Falstaff as we have stopped seeing him. It is not historically distant. It is America in the moment of its filming, with the ugly side of that on view too, and the beautiful side, the beautiful landscape on view. It is not cozy or comfortable in any way. It is an unsettling movie, and deliberately so. And it isn't super funny. Maybe I just missed it in all the bleakness. Maybe I know the jokes too well. Maybe you laughed and I didn't. But we're not doing a lot of comedy. We're very much interested in the tragedy of Falstaff and his entourage. We're also interested in things that have nothing to do with Shakespeare. Our last shots of Mikey are sad and lonely and alarming, and end ultimately ambiguously. Has he been rescued by a good Samaritan? Has he been kidnapped? All I know is he doesn't have his luggage, his wallet, or his shoes.